I'm really just afraid of the younger kids. The kids, who go to school and sometimes school is their only place where they can get a fresh cooked meal.
Doge has been cutting critical public services and taking funding away from the people that need it. And that's not efficiency, no matter what they say.
Right now at 11, shutting down the Department of Education. Tonight, the White House has confirmed that President Trump is expected to sign an executive order tomorrow to do just that. But can he really do it, and what will it mean for you and your kids?
This was one of President Trump's campaign promises, and he is delivering. NBC's Jocelyn Moran is here with the details. And Jocelyn, a lot of questions and, of course, a lot of concern.
Right, Jess, Raj, closing the department does require an act of Congress, but President Trump could make it nearly impossible for the remaining employees to carry out their work. Experts and educators say they're afraid this could impact some of the most vulnerable students.
Tonight, the White House confirming President Donald Trump plans to sign an executive order Thursday to close the Education Department, fulfilling a years-long pledge to dismantle the federal agency. The order will direct Education Secretary Linda McMahon to, quote, take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education and return education authority to the states, while continuing to ensure the effective and uninterrupted delivery of services, programs, and benefits on which Americans rely.
It's sad. I'm sad. I know how much harder it's going to be and how much we're going to have to struggle for special ed students to get what they deserve in the classrooms across.
David Goldberg, the president of the California Teachers Association, says he's worried for some of the most vulnerable students in the state. The U.S. Department of Education distributes money for schools to assist students with disabilities and for schools with high rates of low-income children. It does not dictate curriculum used in classrooms.
The U.S. Department of Education plays no role in teaching what happens in classrooms in Oakland, in classrooms in Palo Alto. What it does is it provides resources for children who are at the margins to move closer to the center. It provides resources, and resources matter.
Hi guys, and welcome to the Progressive Democracy channel. In today's video, we'll explore President Trump's executive order dismantling the U.S. Department of Education. In a historic and controversial move, President Donald Trump has signed an executive order initiating the dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education. This action aims to transfer control over education from the federal government back to the individual states and local communities, a fulfillment of a key campaign promise. Education Secretary Linda McMahon has been directed to oversee this transition, reflecting the administration's commitment to decentralizing educational authority. The Department of Education, established in 1979 under President Jimmy Carter, has played a central role in shaping national education policies and administering federal funding for programs such as student loans and grants. The proposed dismantling raises significant questions about the future management of these critical services. Supporters of this move argue that returning control to states and local communities will lead to more tailored and effective educational policies, fostering innovation and responsiveness to local needs. They believe that reducing federal oversight can empower parents and educators to make decisions that best serve their students. However, opponents express deep concern over potential disparities that may arise from this decentralization. They worry about the continuity of essential federal programs, including student loans, Pell Grants, and funding for special education. For instance, school officials have voiced apprehensions about the impact on programs like the Carl Perkins Grant, which supports career and technical education. Legal challenges are already emerging. Advocacy groups and educators are preparing to contest the executive order, arguing that it oversteps presidential authority and could disrupt essential educational services nationwide. The move has sparked a national debate about the role of federal oversight in ensuring equitable education for all students. If this is the kind of content you enjoy, please continue subscribing, liking, and sharing because it helps YouTube recommend it to a wider audience. And now let's go straight to this video. You'll see clips about this matter, starting with what really happens now that the Department of Education has been removed. But before President Trump officially signed the bill to dismantle the Department of Education, many individuals took to social media to share what they believed would really happen if it were removed. These videos, created before the decision was finalized, ranged from hopeful predictions to serious concerns. Just a quick note, full credit goes to the original creators of these videos.
What happens if your child's school suddenly has no federal rules? No Title IX, no special education programs, no Pell Grants. Well, that's what that bill wants to do. Hey y'all, and on today's legislation lowdown, we are breaking down H.R. 899, a bill designed to eliminate the U.S. Department of Education. So why is H.R. 899 even on the table? Okay, so the first thing it's put in place to do is to terminate the U.S. Department of Education by December 31st, 2025. Now, supporters argue that education should be fully controlled by the state and local government. So who introduced this bill? This bill was introduced by Republican Representative Thomas Macy. So if H.R. 899 goes into effect, who will be the most affected? Let's get into it. Students with disabilities, women and girls losing Title IX protections, low-income college students who depend on federal Pell Grants. I know I definitely did. Students of color in underfunded school systems. Who will benefit? State and local governments, private and charter schools with less federal oversight. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like a full breakdown on how and where and why these two communities will benefit the most. Who will hurt the most? Well, that's obvious. Families that rely on federal support for education. It seems to me they're trying to make education a pay-to-play situation, if you know what I mean.
What's the impact of dismantling the Department of Education? The Department of Education plays a vital role in making education more accessible and equitable across the U.S. Each year, it distributes over $120 billion in grants, loans, and work-study funds to nearly 10 million college students. It also provides $18.4 billion through Title I to support 26 million low-income K-12 students and $15 billion for 7.4 million students with disabilities under IDEA. While the federal government contributes only about 10% of total K-12 funding, that funding is concentrated where it's needed most, such as rural areas, underserved communities, and students with special needs. President Trump's new executive order directs Education Secretary Linda McMahon to begin dismantling the department. He argues that the agency doesn't directly educate anyone and should return authority to the states. The department has already cut nearly 50% of its workforce and shuttered 7 of its 12 regional civil rights offices. Federal responsibilities like enforcing civil rights, overseeing student loans, and distributing grants may be shifted to agencies with little to no experience in education, such as the Department of Justice or the Treasury. Critics warn that this move threatens essential protections and funding. The Office for Civil Rights, which investigates over 10,000 discrimination complaints annually, is severely understaffed. States like Mississippi, Montana, and Alaska, where over 20% of school budgets come from federal aid, could be hardest hit. Programs for veterans, students with disabilities, and historically black colleges may face serious delays or disruptions during the transition. Higher education institutions are especially vulnerable. The department ensures that colleges comply with financial aid laws, protects students from predatory for-profit schools, and supports access for low-income students through Pell Grants, $39 billion of which were awarded last year. If those functions are moved or weakened, smaller colleges and students without financial safety nets could suffer most. Confusion over federal student aid processing and loan forgiveness could increase, pushing more borrowers into default and creating long-term consequences for college affordability.
So, after those clips shown, was it clear? Do you have a better understanding of what could happen if the Department of Education is dismantled? To make sure you get the full picture, I've got a couple more clips coming up. Hopefully, these voices will help break things down further so we can really grasp the impact of his decision.
I don't think people realize what would happen if the Department of Education was shut down tomorrow. So here's 4 key programs that would be impacted the most. The first one, Title I funding. Title I schools could lose essential funding that directly impacts an estimated 2.8 million students in low-income communities. And just to clarify, schools can use Title I funds if at least 40% of their student population is low income. Oftentimes though, that percentage is a lot higher. The second program is IDEA, which provides special education services to about 7.5 million students. Now, these are students with specific learning disabilities, students with language disorders, students with developmental delays, students with ADHD, and students with autism, just to name a few. The third program that would be impacted is a department that protects students against discrimination based on race, gender, and disability. This means students would have zero protection against schools, which is a pretty big deal. And the last one is Pell Grants and federal student loan programs would also be gone. This means students who rely on federal loan programs to pay for higher education would have to find private loans instead. And we all know that private loans don't have the best terms, leaving many students unable to fund their education. Basically, it's a bad idea.
Happy they're dismantling the Department of Education. Say more. I don't want the federal government telling me what to do in my classroom. They should leave that up to the states. Oh, that's a misconception. The Department of Education has no power over what's taught in schools. In reality, it's already up to the states to determine what is taught in classrooms. Oh, so what does the Department of Education do? They send money to public schools. So the funding my Title I school receives and the funding for children with special needs comes from the Department of Education? That's right. They also manage college, financial, and student loans. Like FAFSA? I've received FAFSA. Exactly. They also evaluate education outcomes and create the National Report Card. The data generated by the NAEP is then used by educators, policymakers, and researchers to work towards improving K-12 education across the country. Oh, so that's how we know in both reading and math, most 4th and 8th graders in 2024 still performed below pre-pandemic 2019 levels, but are slightly better than 2022 in math scores? Yeah, the Department of Education also investigates issues where schools may be breaking federal civic law of discrimination. As a woman in the education field, I know firsthand how discrimination can affect our marginalized communities. You get it. So eliminating the Department of Education would steal resources for our most vulnerable students, explode class sizes, cut job training programs, make higher education more expensive and out of reach for middle-class families, take away special education services for students with disabilities, and gut student civil rights protections. Yeah.
This comes a little more than a week after the Education Department announced a drastic reduction in its workforce. The department also runs the Public Student Loan Program, which has more consumer protections and lower interest rates than private education loan programs. The order will also ensure the agency's funds do not go toward programs or activities that advance diversity, equity, and inclusion goals or gender ideology. UC Berkeley Associate Professor of Education Travis Bristol believes this could have serious impacts for families in California.
In March, as I am preparing to go to college, if I don't know if I have the resources from the federal government through FAFSA, through a Pell Grant, through a Stafford loan, if I don't know if I have the resources to attend college, then being unable, I may then decide not to attend college.
Like you know, there are people in favor of this decision. Some argue that shifting control to the states would lead to better, more personalized education systems with less federal interference. They believe this move can encourage innovation and empower parents and teachers to make decisions that truly benefit students. One of the biggest arguments in favor of dismantling the Department of Education is that shifting control back to the states could lead to a more personalized and effective education system. Supporters believe that by removing federal oversight, local communities will have more freedom to craft policies that directly address the unique needs of their students. But think about it. What works for students in a rural farming town in Nebraska may not be the best approach for kids in a densely populated city like New York. Federal regulations often take a one size fits all approach, which can sometimes stifle creativity and innovation in education. By giving power back to state and local governments, supporters argue that schools will have the flexibility to design curriculums, teaching methods, and policies that fit their specific student populations. This shift could also pave the way for more school choice programs, including charter schools, homeschooling initiatives, and voucher systems that allow parents to choose the best educational path for their children. In states like Florida and Texas, which already have strong school choice policies, Advocates say that removing federal oversight could lead to even greater educational diversity and competition, potentially improving overall quality. Let's have a look at what others have to say.
Trump just got rid of the Department of Education. I used to be a teacher. I was a summa cum laude graduate, and so I think this is awesome! What? We need it to educate people! Yeah, just like we need the Department of Defense to defend America. The Department of Education was just a bunch of policymakers. They would steal money from people like us, and then they would give it back to the schools only if they would follow their curriculum. The Department of Education was big in student loans. We know how great those are. They started in 1979, so let's see how it went since then. Well, here's spending on students, up, and here's test scores, beep. Oh, and here's our world ranking in education. And people will say, oh no, it's not their fault. It's because they didn't have enough money. They didn't have enough power. That's like a doctor going into a patient, giving him a new type of medicine. The patient gets sicker and sicker and they're about to die. And then the doctor's like, it's not my fault. Problem is I didn't give him enough medicine. Now, what does education actually mean? It's a Latin word with 3 parts. Education. A means out, duke means lead, ation makes it a noun. So it's the act of leading or drawing out the innate talents and geniuses inside all of us. Is that really what the schools are doing today? Now each state's gonna run their own education, which isn't great by any means, but it's certainly better than one giant monolithic entity dictating what everybody has to do. We still got a long way to go, but at least this is a step in the right direction. All right, everybody, my name is Michael. Hope you like this one. Bye-bye!
I'd like to go ahead and get this wrapped up in a nutshell because I've been seeing so many people saying Trump is taking away free lunches and IEPs and Pell Grants. I don't know what to do. When it comes to the Department of Education, he has minimized it because they weren't doing nothing with your kids anyway. It's children that graduated high school that think 2 + 2 = purple. And y'all think it's okay for the Department of Education to still operate in the manner that it has been operating in the last 10, 12 years. I mean, help me help you because I need to understand. The free lunches and things like that, that's being moved to the Department of Agriculture. Okay? Which means your children might be getting healthier meals. So that might be a good thing, you know? As far as you getting a Pell Grant, that's been moved to the Department of Treasury. All right. They called the press secretary outside the White House, and she said the Department of Education is still actually kind of helping out with the grants and things for children who want to go to college. So maybe if they teamed up, you might be able to get better grants for your college education. Okay. The last one is the IEPs. That's the Department of Health and Human Services now, which means there might be a more concentrated effort to help your child when they have special needs. Okay, let's stop complaining so much and maybe just be a little bit more positive when it comes to moving forward with things. Y'all been complaining about the Department of Education for I don't know how long. So now that somebody's doing something about it, you mad. You're mad. It's children graduating high school that can't read, that should have been left behind. But no, y'all want to get mad because the man trying to reconstruct the Department of Education. I don't think you can be pleased at this point. If I was him, I would just say to hell with it.
Is getting rid of the Department of Education. I have school-aged kids. So what does he mean by that? It took me a hot minute to find straightforward information about what he was talking about that wasn't emotionally charged. And what I found out by this is, yes, he is getting rid of the Department of Education, but on the federal level, he's bringing it to more power to the states. Generally, this is what the Department of Education does. So if we got rid of that, each state would decide its own funding, policies, rules for schools. People like this idea because they think that their local leaders understand their communities better than the federal government, which might make the schools more responsive to the local needs. But on the other hand, losing funding might hurt poorer schools. And with states having different standards, it could create gaps in education quality. Also, those students that rely on federal protections, like those with disabilities, might lose their funding based on if their state changes their policy. So, pros, moving the power to the states might give the local areas more control. Cons, it could create major differences in the quality of education and protections. Hopefully now you understand and it's a less scary concept. Or more scary, depending on the way you look at it. I don't know.
But of course, this raises an important question. Without federal oversight, how do we ensure accountability? The Department of Education currently sets national standards to ensure all students, regardless of where they live, receive a baseline level of education. Supporters of this shift believe that states will be motivated to maintain high standards on their own, but critics argue that some regions may fall behind, leading to greater disparities in education quality. While some see the removal of the Department of Education as a step toward more local control, others warn that it could bring major disruptions, especially for students who rely on federal funding for essential programs. One of the biggest concerns is the potential loss of federal funding for student loans and grants. Right now, millions of college students depend on programs like Pell Grants and federally subsidized loans to afford higher education. If the Department of Education is dismantled, who will oversee these programs? Will states step in to provide the same level of financial support, or will students be left struggling to find alternative funding? Then there's the issue of special education. The federal government provides billions of dollars to support students with disabilities through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. Without this funding, many schools, especially those in lower income areas, could struggle to provide the necessary resources, staff, and accommodations that these students need. Could this lead to fewer services and less support for students who need it the most? Another major worry is the growing inequality between states. Right now, federal funding helps level the playing field, ensuring that students in lower income states and communities have access to the same quality of education as those in wealthier areas. Without a national standard, education quality could become entirely dependent on state budgets, which vary widely across the country. Wealthier states might be able to maintain strong school systems, while poorer states could fall behind, deepening the education gap. Now let's have a look at what people say about this.
Donald Trump plans to sign an executive order calling for the complete elimination of the federal Department of Education. And much like literally everything else that Republicans ever do, all of this is just motivated by their desire to give even more tax cuts and handouts to wealthy billionaires and multinational corporations. And I can prove it to you. Donald Trump wants to treat school performance in the exact same way that he treated COVID testing. Here's what I mean by that. Back in June of 2020, Trump famously said of COVID, if we just stopped testing right now, we'd have very few cases. Obviously, that was an insane thing to say. Testing for viruses doesn't in any way affect the actual number of people who have the virus. It just gives you the information to know how many people had the virus. In the same way, Donald Trump wants us to stop having the information about how our schools are actually performing. Consistently, the top performing states in public education are almost entirely Democratic run, and the bottom performing states in public education are almost entirely Republican run. In fact, of the top 10 states for public education in the nation, 5 of them are ruled by Democratic supermajorities, meaning that their governor, their state house, and their state senate are all run by the Democratic Party. And the other 5 all have very heavy Democratic presence in their state politics. Conversely, if you look at the bottom 10 states for public education, 7 of the 10 are run by Republican supermajorities, and 2 of the others have very heavy Republican presences in their state politics. Time after time after time, it is absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt proven that Republican policies for public education fail. Donald Trump and other Republicans know if they can eliminate the federal Department of Education, they will be able to prevent the American people from ever knowing how public schools in each state are actually performing. Effectively, they want to turn school reporting into the same disaster that COVID reporting was during the pandemic. If you remember, back during Trump's first presidency, it was nearly impossible for us to know the actual correct numbers for a lot of states because that gathering of information and reporting out to the American people was done on a state-by-state basis. And some states were very diligent and very honest, and other states were neither of those things. We're looking at the same exact disaster incoming for education. If we have to rely on our states to accurately gather and report that data, we will never again actually know which states are succeeding and which states are failing. There will no longer be any guardrails to help make sure that states that are failing, like Oklahoma, 48th in education, at that point, the officials in charge in Oklahoma can, and as an Okie, I can confirm absolutely will lie about how schools are performing. We already see this the entire time that Oklahoma has been at the complete bottom of performance for public education. The state superintendent, Ryan Walters, has been going out on every single conservative news outlet crowing about how incredible of a job Oklahoma is doing in education. If you were to only have what he says to go on, you would think that Oklahoma had the best possible public school performance imaginable. And that's
to everyone saying if the Department of Education is abolished, children with disabilities and those in underserved communities will still get access to equitable education and services, and it will just be turned over to the states. Do you understand in part why the Department of Education was created? One of its main missions is equal access to education, something that did not exist at the state level until the passage of federal laws such as Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which prohibited discrimination based on race, sex, and disability, as well as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which was passed in 1990. Without federal oversight, particularly if any of these laws that I just mentioned are abolished along with the Department of Education, there is no guarantee that students with disabilities, students from low-income areas, students of various backgrounds that require different needs from the standard education will receive those services. Currently, the federal government provides about 13.6% of the funding for public K-12 education. This means that the states, if the Department of Education is abolished, will have to determine how to handle the funding that they will lose. Some states may tax residents more to make up the difference. Some states will not, resulting in programs and supports being defunded. The state will also have now total control on how resources will be distributed, which will most likely benefit the most wealthy of students, particularly those without any additional educational needs. We likely will also see greater educational disparities, not only among different states, but also within states. I am not saying our education system is perfect. There are plenty of things that need to change. But the Department of Education was developed for a reason, and abolishing it is likely just going to further harm already marginalized students.
I hate standardized testing. Let's just get rid of the Department of Education so that that goes away. Standardized testing is not run by the Department of Education. The federal government does require some kind of testing for accountability purposes, but your state decides on the test, it chooses the vendor, it signs the contract, and it mandates the schedule. These are the big four, and they make billions off of high-stakes standardized testing. They have lobbyists locked and loaded, and they stay ready with a PowerPoint, okay? I have a really hard time believing that if we eliminated federal oversight, every governor, state legislator, and state board of education would be like, all right guys, that was fun, see ya. But like Pearson alone has made hundreds of millions just off of its contracts with Texas. They don't just sell texts, they're like textbooks, the prep tools, the data dashboards, and then they offer to analyze the data for you. I am sure they want the Department of Education eliminated though, because then testing would be extra messy and super state driven. And that means 50 different chances to win a contract, baby. You might also have seen the Department of Education making cuts, and one of which is the department that works on NAEP, the nation's report card. That is the only federally run, nationally consistent, and low stakes test that we have. So even now with the U.S. Department of Education still in place, states are going to have even less national comparison data, and that's more of an incentive to double down on their own high stakes standardized tests at the state level. So cutting the department entirely very well could make the testing situation worse, not better. For the record, I don't know if you can tell, but I freaking hate these standardized testing companies, but we gotta take it up with the right people, you know? Your state reps, your governor, and the billion-dollar companies themselves.
All right, so today's the day where Donald Trump supposedly is going to sign that executive order that's going to dissolve the Department of Education, right? We're not really sure if he's actually going to sign it today. I believe a week back he was supposed to sign it, but he chose not to. But either way, whether or not he does it today, just the thought, just the notion, just the acknowledgement, just us knowing that this is what he plans on doing, this is the thought, this is what they want to happen, I feel like is enough for us, the people, the citizens of America, for us to be productive. And just in case he does actually sign that executive order that will dissolve the Department of Education, I just wanted to remind you guys that the new Department of Education secretary is Linda McMahon. Remember? Y'all remember when back at the inauguration and we saw all of those billionaires and millionaires that makes up the presidential cabinet? Yeah. And I know how I was talking about in that last video that kind of went viral about who's next. She's next. She's next. See, Linda McMahon has a net worth of $3.2 billion, which she acquired mainly through being a business executive and being a professional wrestler promoter for WWE. I know you guys have heard of that, right? WWE, Raw, SmackDown, all of that. Yeah, that's where she got majority of her money from. Yet, she has been named as the new Department of Education secretary. The bitch has no experience. None. Let me not get besides myself. Let's just say that she has very, very limited experience in the Department of Education, okay? And to even be more frank, her highest degree is a bachelor's, but in French. So I guess she's certified to be able to teach the language, but I think the Department of Education is more than just the languages, you know? This is DEI hiring at its finest, because this woman has absolutely no qualifications for her to be in the role that she's in right now. Just as Elon Musk had no qualifications for him to be in the role that he's in right now. And we see how that's turning out for him. So I need us to make this happen to Miss Linda McMahon. McMahon, yeah. Because I'm pretty much 100% certain that the only reason why you even accepted this job opportunity was because of the money, the monetary rewards that comes with it. That's the only reason. You have absolutely no experience, no qualifications. There should be no reason why you are in the position that you're in. That's like putting in a first-year med student in the fucking surgery room. You have a bachelor's, but that's it. Like, and it's in French. What is that gonna do for us here in America? It's your greed and your gluttony for wealth that allows you to take a position that you know damn well that you should have never fucking accepted. And it's for that reason alone that I believe that you deserve to lose a lot of your fucking money. You deserve to lose a lot of your fucking money, because now you're playing with the education and the future of this fucking country, because you understand children are the future. And if you're educating them incorrectly, understand and expect a fucked up future.
So, now that we've explored both sides of this debate, the big question remains: what happens next? The dismantling of the Department of Education is one of the most significant policy shifts in decades, and whether you support it or oppose it, there's no denying that it will reshape education in America for generations to come. Supporters argue that this move will empower states, parents, and teachers to create a more flexible and innovative education system free from federal bureaucracy. But opponents warn that it could lead to increased inequality, loss of crucial funding, and major disruptions for millions of students. As we move forward, the real test will be how states handle this new responsibility. Will they step up and fill the gaps left by the federal government? Or will we start seeing a wider divide in education quality across the country? At the end of the day, this isn't just about politics. It's about the future of our kids, our schools, and the next generation. No matter which side of the debate you're on, one thing is clear: education is too important to get wrong. So, what do you think? Is this a step towards progress or a dangerous gamble? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's get the conversation going. And if you want to stay updated on how this plays out, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It helps me grow my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.